formal. I don't typically run formal, but we were just super blessed with Kathy this morning and just the word she brought. So I'm looking really forward to tonight and what the Lord is going to stir in our hearts and what the Lord has been stirring in Kathy's heart for years and years. And so I just am going to pray, and then I'm just going to give it over to Kathy. So Lord, I just love how in every season you just know exactly what we need. So Lord, as we just come in tonight and as we kind of stare down the week ahead and our to-do list and what our kids need and our work schedules, I just ask that we could take a deep breath and just hear the word you have for each of us. I thank you for how the intentionality we walk in our relationship is such a kingdom mindset, and how it creates ripple effects in our family systems, in our churches. And so, Lord, I just thank you that you're just giving us tools and mindsets and heart postures and just challenging in the way that we think and the way that we operate. So, Lord, I just ask that you would just open our hearts and our minds to the work that you want to do. We just ask that you would just bless Jim and Kathy. We love you, Lord, and we just thank you for this evening. In your name, amen. Amen. Would you just give a warm welcome to Kathy?
Well, I'm glad you came out tonight. This is the kind of weather you just want to stay in and get all cozy. So it's good to have you here. I have to say that this is probably my favorite thing of all the things that I teach on. This is my favorite because I just see that our emotional well-being is so much a part of who we are and so much a part of what causes us struggles in life. And so everything I'm going to share tonight about fostering emotional health in your relationships is going to be about you personally, in your relationships with spouses or friends or family. And I'm also going to say a lot about kids. Whether you're a parent or not, some of you look like you could have grandkids. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. Does that make you feel old? I have 6, so I think that's a wonderful thing to have grandkids. But anyway, I'm just excited. In the work that I do, if you were here this morning, I talked a little bit about the Ultimate Journey, and I'm not going to share anything major about that, but there's brochures back there if you want to have more information, or you can learn more about it online, theultimatejourney.org. But in the work that I've done over the past 25 years, I've had the privilege of hearing a lot of stories. I mentioned that doing those, especially those phase 1 groups where people unpack everything. And really what I found out is it's those childhood things, those unresolved childhood things is what impacts us later on in life. And if we haven't processed those things, they don't just go away. We drag them with us. And you can't leave your past behind if it's still connected to you. And so we need to be able to process those things so we really can leave it behind. It's not so much the events that happen to us, but whether or not we process them and what we come to believe about ourselves because of what happened. A lot of people say, well, I can't, if the past is in the past, I can't do anything about it now. I can't do anything. You know what? You can't change those events. But you can process the feelings and you can change the way you think about yourself. And that's really important. For example, a little girl that gets molested. 1 in 6 women have been molested as children. 1 in 6 men. 1 in 6 men. 1 in 4 women. So, we could think about even in this room. That's a lot. And you know what? I know it's true because I hear it all the time. And so when a child is molested, they believe that they are bad, dirty, and shameful, and something's wrong with them. Every one of them. I'm bad, I'm dirty, and shameful, and something's wrong with me. But what's really the truth? What was done to that child was bad, dirty, and shameful, and something was wrong with the person that did it to them. But I have yet to find one person that's been molested that didn't think it was their fault. The only people that don't are the ones that process as a child. They're able to talk about it as a child. So I'm talking about that as a very big event, but there are multiple events that we all experience as children. And so after 25 years, I feel like I've been doing damage control. I'm talking to the adults. And, if I can help parents be able to help their children, then maybe we could go out of business in the ultimate journey. That would be so great. That would be so great. Because it's hard. And so tonight, those of you that are parents, I hope I can give you some really great tools to help you with your own children in processing their emotions. Parenting is the hardest job in the world. I believe it's the hardest, and I believe it's the most important. And yet it has the least amount of job training. We really don't have a lot of training to be a parent. And so I hope you can get some tools to be able to what I call gardening your children. But everything I'm going to say tonight is for everyone. Whatever relationship you have, I will give some specific examples related to kids and then others. But I think it's really important. I do believe that as we go through this, if you're a parent, I believe parents do the best they can with what they have. So if you find like, oh man, I haven't been doing that with my kids, or oh, I've been doing that with my kids, please don't beat yourself up. Have grace for yourself because you're doing the best with what you have. Okay, I think of a family as like a bowl of soup, and if I have soup and if I just have broth, I can say I have soup. But if I can put carrots and peas and potatoes in it, then I have a more nutritious soup. If I can put some protein in it. But if I don't have peas and carrots and potatoes growing in my garden, they're not going to get in my soup. And for some of us, our parents didn't have a garden with peas, potatoes, and carrots, or chickens or beef or whatever. So it didn't get in our soup, okay? And so that's where they came from, and that's an explanation, but it doesn't change the fact that we needed that in our soup. So we need to get the things in our own soup that we didn't get, but we also want to be able to put that in other people's lives. And so some of that is what I'm going to be talking about tonight. Okay, so like I said, we're going to foster emotional healing. And first that begins with understanding emotional intelligence. So let's pray, and then we'll get into the main part of my message. Heavenly Father, thank you that you love us so much. Thank you that you care about everything that we feel. Thank you that you gave us our feelings. Those emotions come from you. You put tear ducts in our eyes. Father, you have purposes for everything. And so I just ask that tonight you would just deposit in each one's soul exactly what they need to hear. And I just ask that you would just speak through me. Just speak through me that I could be a vessel and release your heart. We ask this in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen. Okay, so let's just start with talking about emotional intelligence. That's been something that we hear more about these days. It's the capacity to be aware of, control, and express one's emotions and to handle interpersonal relationships judiciously and empathetically. Okay, so we need to be able to have our ability to be aware of our feelings. What are my emotions? Be able to control our emotions, and also be able to be there for the emotions of other people. Studies show that more importantly than having a high IQ or doing well academically is not as important as your EQ. That's your emotional quotient. So we're so concerned about, we want our kids to be smart and do well and get into good colleges and all of that. But how are they emotionally? Are they developing well emotionally? Emotional intelligence is the key to personal and professional success. It's also necessary for spiritual maturity. And as I mentioned this morning, Peter Scazzaro, in his book, Emotionally Healthy Spirituality, says it's impossible to be spiritually mature if you're emotionally immature. And many of us have never really processed through a lot of those emotional things. If you want to be holy, you have to be whole. I'll say that again. If you want to be holy, you have to be whole. Believers who are not emotionally whole often tend to look to other things to numb out from those emotions they're not processing, which often leads to sinful behavior. The education of emotions first begins with, we got to know what they are. We got to be able to know what are some of these emotions. So just some of them that are major, fear, joy, sadness, anger, being surprised, silliness. Those are all emotions. And there are no right or wrong emotions. Emotions are morally neutral. They just are. Now, what we do with expressing our emotions, how we express our emotions, can be a problem. The Bible says, be angry, but do not sin. So it's okay to be angry, but we don't want to sin in our anger. We can be angry, but we're not going to call somebody a name. God gave us those feelings. Jesus had emotions. When Lazarus died, he wept with Mary and Martha. He was angry when he was in the temple and they were selling their goods. And he said, no, my house is a house of prayer. And he tossed tables around. He was angry. He was fearful. How could Jesus be fearful? Remember when he's in the garden? Remove this cup from me. Anybody be scared if you're going to be crucified? Okay, this is Jesus who was coming to fulfill his mission. It was his moment. And 3 times he said, remove this cup from me. See, I'm pretty sure if Jesus can be sad and angry and afraid, we can too. Right? We can have those emotions too. So those yucky feelings that we have often produce bad behavior, like anger outbursts and emotional drama or even selfishness. But those nice fuzzy feelings, they produce the good behavior that is cooperative and kind and considerate. Once emotions are identified and expressed by someone, our job as a friend or a parent or a spouse or our coworker is to be able to validate those feelings. Okay, this is what we're going to talk about tonight. It's one thing to have emotions, but it's another thing to be able to have them validated. So let's talk about that word validating. Validating is recognizing the worthiness of or legitimacy of one's feelings by acknowledging you understand where they're coming from. And you don't have to agree with them, and you don't have to take them on, but it's about validating them. So why is it so important to validate feelings? First of all, it's like watering a plant. When you are stressed out, when you are feeling emotions, and someone is there to validate where you're, it's like water on that plant. In children, tantrums, meltdowns, anger, and lots of crying, those are evidence of big emotions. I remember my oldest daughter, this was recently, and she was telling me that her 6-year-old was just really whiny and irritable, and it was not her normal self. And her mom had the wisdom to say, is something going on? You seem out of sorts today. Could this be about starting school tomorrow? See, she's tuned in. See, sometimes, what are you whining about? What are you whining about? We could be saying that. What are you whining about? This isn't like you to be whining. But instead it's like, no, because that's not like her. What's that about? Are you nervous about starting school? And they were able to unpack that, and that little girl was able to process those feelings. Research shows that offering validation to someone experiencing intense emotions actually releases soothing chemicals in your brain. It also bonds that person to you. You know, we feel close to people who make us feel seen and heard. And I have, when I've talked to parents about these things, they always say, now we have a much stronger emotional connection to our children. There's a bond there that we didn't have before. I think that's beautiful. There is a direct connection between how kids feel and how they behave. When children feel right, they act right. Isn't that true of all of us? When we feel right, we act right. When we don't feel so good, we don't act so good. So we want to help people in their journey to act right by validating their feelings. But we often have a difficult time accepting the feelings of others. It's not always easy. For example, a child says, "I hate you." Has anybody parent had a kid say that to you? Well, you're lucky. I guess some of you are nodding. Okay, I remember when my oldest daughter, she was 5 years old, and she said, "You're a witch." You know, well, I mean, I know why she was a witch, because I asked why she thought I was a witch, because I did this horrible thing and wanted her to clean up her room. But, you know, kids know your buttons, right? Maybe if I call Mom a witch, she'll back off. You know, and of course, fortunately, I didn't take it personally. And it's so funny, even as an adult, she goes, "Mom, I'm so sorry I called you a witch." I'm like, "Honey, it's okay. I knew you didn't mean it, you know, but it's okay." But what if you said, you know, if the child says, "I hate you." "Well, you don't really hate me," or "How dare you say that? I'm your parent." Or a friend has an angry outburst. You might say, "There's no reason to be angry. It's not that big a deal." Or maybe a spouse mentions that they had a hard day at work. "Well, you know what? Tomorrow's a new day." Or, "You think you had a hard day? Well, this is what happened to my day." Is anybody hearing any validating going on yet? Or a child falls down and skins their knee. I see this all the time. A child falls down somewhere. Immediately, the child's crying, right? "You're fine, you're fine." I just tell you, if I'm in public, I have to, because I just want to say, "They're really not fine. Can you just say, 'I'm sorry that happened,' and pick them up and give them a hug?" But I hear that so much. "You're fine, you're fine." Feelings are for feeling, not for fixing. Memorize this. I teach a class on emotions to kids, and this is our theme. Feelings are for feeling, not for fixing. Let's say that together. Feelings are for feeling, not for fixing. If you can get that down, you will go far. When people open up about their experience, our instinct might be to comment, correct, or go into problem-solving mode, which causes them to shut down. I call it emotional constipation. When you have all these feelings and they're not being able to be processed, you're getting emotionally constipated. You know, we have our actual processing system, our digestive system. We take it in, and it's supposed to come out. But if you're experiencing all of this emotion and it doesn't have anywhere to go, you're stuck. And then when you're stuck, you have to do something to manage it, right? And that's where a lot of our addictive behaviors come in, because we're managing it, or we're letting it spill out in ways that aren't productive to ourselves or other people. You know, how about when you have feelings? Do you like to have your feelings dismissed? Do you like to be told you should feel something different? I remember sometimes it's so hard. I remember our youngest daughter, she was in 2nd grade, and she'd come home from school, and something happened. Some boy or somebody at school had really hurt her feelings. She walks in the door off the bus, and she comes into the kitchen, and she's crying, and I sit down, and I put her on my lap, and I say, "Honey, what's going on?" And she starts talking about this boy and how mean he was. And I'm holding her, and I'm telling you what, it took everything in me not to say, "We're going to the principal tomorrow. I think I'm going to call his parents." That's what I'm thinking, but I'm like, I know that's not what she needs. And so she just sat there and cried, "I'm sorry that happened." yeah, that wasn't very nice. I'm sorry, honey. And she just cried and felt. And next thing you know, okay, Mom, I'm going to go play. See, that's all she needed. She didn't need to fix it. Now, certainly if this was something that happened every single day and she was being bullied or something, I would still validate her feelings, but there might need to be some action taken. But at that moment, I just focused on where she was. She processed her feelings and she was up and going. So not having our feelings validated, that often starts in childhood. So when we deny our children's feelings, when our feelings have been denied, they may feel confused, sad, hurt, or angry. It teaches children not to know what their feelings are or to trust them. And maybe you can relate to this as a child. The feelings children are not able to unpack become baggage they have to carry on later in life. And I would be surprised if that's not the case with many of you. And that's why we do the Ultimate Journey. It's one of the reasons. We help people unpack things that they've been dragging along that they were never supposed to carry. And the hard thing is many of our pain and wounds come from our parents, our well-intentioned parents, right? I'll have to tell you a quick story. If you were here this morning, I talked about being a perfectionist. Well, if you're a perfectionist and you have to be perfect, then your kids have to be perfect because they're a reflection of you, right? How can I be perfect if my kids aren't perfect? And so I put pressure on them when they were really little. And fortunately, they were 8 and 10 when I went through phase 1 of the Ultimate Journey, changed everything around. But at the time, so after I did go through phase 1 of the Ultimate Journey and I recognized it, I was like, oh my goodness, what have I done to my kids? And I remember thinking, I'm going to talk to them. And so I was driving in the car with my daughter. She was 10 at the time. And I said, Rachel, I said, you know, I love you, but I know there are things that I've done that have hurt you. And I would really like you to tell me about it because I care about you. I really want to hear it. Well, I'm thinking it's going to take her a long time. Like, Mom, I'll have to get back to you on that. Well, probably within 10 seconds. And we had a good relationship. She goes, Mom, I remember when I was 3 years old. And she started crying. And she sounded like a 3-year-old. She goes, I remember when I was 3 years old, and I tried so hard to make my bed really good. And you came in my room and you said, Rachel, that's not how you make your bed. Do I remember that? Did I have any recollection of that? I could have said, I don't think that happened. I don't remember that. But guess what I do remember? I was a perfectionistic mom. Is that what a perfectionist mom would say to their kid? Yep. Exactly. So I knew. And why would she make it up? She has no reason to make that up. And I knew that's something I could say. And, I've got grandkids now. I'm thinking, how? I mean, if a 3-year-old could even get the comforter back on the bed. I mean, it's just ridiculous to think about, but those expectations that I had. And I was able to apologize to her. And I was going to say, honey, I am so sorry. I said, that was not about you. That was about me. I should have never expected that from you. And I should have cheered on any effort that you made. Good job. I'm so proud of you. And so she was able at that moment to process that emotion. She hadn't cried those tears for 7 years. She was able to process all of that. And then I said, honey, what message did that give you? See, that's the other part of it. She goes, that I don't measure up. See, that seems so trivial, but it was huge because and she wanted to please her mom. See, that's how absolutely critical it is, not just for our kids, but for anybody, that we can be able to process things. Because I remember then, about a year later, when I was on staff at Teen Challenge and I was coming up with this list of rules, family rules that we have. You're not good enough. You have to keep up the public image. You have to please people at all costs. I was coming with this list of rules, and she came in, and I was typing this up, and she goes, Mom, what are you doing? I told her, and I said, hey, how about you look at these and see if there's any in our family? And she came back to me, and she goes, Mom, this one, you have to be perfect. It used to be a rule in our family, but it's not anymore. Praise God. I was so thankful. I was so thankful. And I know you guys can have moments like that too. When we deny children's feelings, they do not get the comfort they need. This can result in them looking to false substitutes as they get older, like food or drugs or alcohol or sex addiction. When I was on staff at Teen Challenge, I was there for 5 years, and for the last 2 years, my job was to take the students, is what we called them, and they were all 17 years and older, through phase 1 of the ultimate journey. And over 90% of those guys were molested as children. And I never thought when I was in the groups, wow, I'm surprised you became a drug addict or an alcoholic. It was like, wow, you made it. That was their story. I remember I had the opportunity to go to prison. They were doing the ultimate journey. Some people took it into the Fort Dodge and the Rockwell City prisons. And they wanted to know if I wanted to come visit Jim and I on the last day of finishing phase 1, and they were going to start phase 2. And this was pre-COVID. Now they weren't able to get in there. But so I go in there, and here's all these guys in their orange jumpsuits. 3 of them were in there for murder. And they were so grateful. But this is what I heard from multiple guys as I talked to them. We never knew we could share our emotions. We never knew there was a place where we could unburden our feelings. But they had all that. And see, because they didn't feel right, they didn't act right. And that was a lot of why they were dead. Many of them had been in foster homes, tossed around, horrible stories. I want to share my definition of sin. Sin is the result of accumulated frustration that we try to work out in ways contrary to God. Let me say that again. Sin is nothing more than the result of accumulated frustration that we try to work out in ways contrary to God. See, so many times we're like, just stop doing it, just stop doing it, just stop doing it. Well, we know it's wrong. And I found most people don't have a problem, not everybody, but that knowing that it's wrong. They just don't know how not to do it. But if you've got this accumulated frustration that you're dealing with, it's going to drive you to do something to relieve this frustration. And what people are really needing is comfort. And every addiction is a substitute for the comfort, the true comfort we need. That becomes their comfort rather than knowing how to comfort themselves. And so people can get free from addiction pretty simply if instead of going to that, they go here. They're able to comfort themselves. They're able to connect with their pain. Obviously, getting the comfort of other people is helpful. Emotions are like the warning light on the dashboard of your car. When you see that red light or whatever color light it is, that tells you, ooh, something's up here. We got to fix this. So we get out the wire cutters. We find that wire and we clip it. Okay, everything's okay now. That's what addictions do. We just cut that off. So what's going to happen then? You're not going to too long till you get down the road and your car's going to go off to the side. Your engine's blown or whatever, and you can't go anywhere. And then what are you going to have to do? You're going to have to go to the mechanic. And what's the mechanic going to have to do? He's going to lift up the hood. And he's going to look in there and see what's really going on. But when he can look at what's really going on, then it can be fixed. And then you can get back down on the road again. But that's what that does when we're not dealing with our emotions. We're clipping those wires. So I want to talk about some of the things that we say to ourselves or to other people that are not validating. Okay, we're going to do the no's first. And so as you listen to these, we're going to do one at a time. I want you to think about, is this something my parent might have said to me? Is this something that maybe I say to myself when I'm going through something? Or if you have children, is this something I'm saying to my kids? Because a lot of times what we got is what we give to other people. And so, don't be hard on yourself as we go through this. If you find it, like I said, we only know what we know. So we're going to start with the first one. Denial of feelings. This is one of the ways we often respond that is not validating. It might sound like this. There's no reason to be upset. You're probably just tired and blowing the whole thing out of proportion. It can't be as bad as you make it out to be. Come on, smile. You look so nice when you smile. So this is a form of minimizing. It might sound, if you cry, I'll give you something to cry about. I bet some of you heard that. That's real validating, right? Or suck it up, buttercup. I heard that one. Someone said their parents, I was just like, ooh, are you kidding me? It sends a message that it's not okay to feel. Or you may even say some of those things to yourself. Maybe an adult, goes through a painful breakup. They're heartbroken. Well, there's more fish in the sea. And that's true, right? There probably are more fish in the sea. But is that what that person needs to hear? Or I didn't like him anyway. He wasn't right for you. While that person in front of you is just sobbing. The next one, the philosophical response. Look, life is like that. Things don't always turn out the way we want. Life isn't fair. Some of us have heard this. Some of us say this to other people. Well, it's true. Life isn't fair. It isn't. But is that comforting when you're feeling something? Next one, advice. Well, you know what I think you should do. Someone comes to you frustrated about something, and you immediately tell them what to do, rather than first validating their frustration. And I got to admit, my tendency is to be a fixer. I like to be a fixer, and I have to really be careful that I don't fall into that. We always hear the stereotypical, and I'm saying stereotypical, between men and women. Wives just want to share their feelings, and men want to fix it. Is that true? I think it is true. And I don't think that's a bad thing. My husband, he always says, we would have our frustrating moments with this, right? And so, he would just say, you just need to tell me up front if you just want me to listen. Well, unfortunately, half the time I'm just already down the road and don't think about telling. But I remember one time I did so good about telling, I'm just going to share my feelings. I just want to put this out there, and I just want you to listen. And he did great. And I was able to share, and he did a great job, and it was so good. And then he's like, so do you want me to tell you what I think? Nope. Tries again. Nope. But you know what? By the time I was done, I already got to where I needed to get. And he's got great wisdom, and he's got great advice. But you know what? I had a lot to process, and sometimes you just got to get that drained out. Next one, questioning. What exactly were you thinking when you did that? Or why would you say that? Or didn't you realize what would happen? Okay, that's kind of a shaming type of response, And what the person's probably hearing is, man, you're stupid. Right? Sounds like that. Next, amateur psychoanalysis. Has it ever occurred to you that the real reason you are so upset by this is because you still haven't forgiven her? Getting to the bottom of something is really good, and that might really be true. But that's not the first response out of the gate. There's a saying, people don't care about what you know until they know you care. See, that's the thing. People need to know that they're seen and heard before we move into that. I remember talking to a gal, and she was sharing how there was we call it like an altar call or prayer time at the church after the service. There were people to be praying, not here, but at another church, to be prayed for. And she went up, and something in the sermon just really triggered something in her. And she had this, all of a sudden, this aha awareness that she'd been molested as a child. And she was just connecting with this, because I don't know if a lot of people suppress that, and it doesn't come back later. In fact, a lot of women, all of a sudden it'll trigger, but like their daughter turns 5 years old, and all of a sudden it triggers that happened to them when they was 5 years old. And I think God, in some ways, it's not always just trying to push down, but sometimes there's a protection there till we can handle stuff. But anyway, she came up to her, and she was sharing with this prayer person up here, my father molested me, blah, blah, blah. The first thing out of that person's mouth was, well, you got to forgive him. Forgiveness is not a Band-Aid. You cannot put a Band-Aid on a gaping wound. We know we do need to forgive. But I believe you need to take an inventory of what are you really forgiving. Let's clean that wound out. Let's look at that pain. Let's look at that hurt. Let's process that. Be able to go through that. And I believe forgiveness will then be a part of that. Okay, but that's another way of trying to fix. Not to minimize the importance of forgiveness, but there's a timing to be able to share that. The defense of the other person. For example, maybe a child is teased or singled out for some reason. Here your kids come, yeah, so-and-so made fun of me. Well, I'm sure he didn't mean anything by it. Just move on. It'll be okay. Dismissal. This causes a child to feel emotionally abandoned and unprotected. We need to feel safe, for our kids to open up to us. A child may say something negative about their parent, for example. Oh, my mom never pays attention to me. You don't need to defend the parent, by saying, well, your mom has a lot going on right now. She's trying her best. Or you don't need to throw the parent under the bus. I can't believe your mom doesn't treat you better. What if you just said, I'm so sorry. I see you're hurting right now. I'm sorry you're hurting. You don't have to defend that person, because you know what? Even if a parent is doing their best, that doesn't mean it's enough. Sometimes I've had stories where when a child is growing up, their parent has an illness. Maybe their mother has a serious illness, and they're maybe in bed for a couple of years. And that is going to impact that child. This mother could be the most amazing mother on the planet. She could love her kids with all her heart, but she's in bed for 2 years. And I have those children sharing about that as adults, what that was like for them. Scary, but we can't talk about that. Scary. Neglect. Okay. Was that mom trying to do anything? No. But that child still needs to process that. They still need to deal with what that loss was during that time. And if we said, well, your mom was sick. She couldn't help it. See, that is true. But that is not going to help that child. Next one, spiritualizing. I'm sure God has a good reason for why this happened to you. Maybe you needed to go through this so you could be stronger and have a testimony. You just need to trust God. Okay, so another response. Well, God causes all things to work together for good for those who love him and are called according to his purpose. True. I just said 2 true statements, but they didn't sound right, did they? Because it wasn't what was needed at the time, right? Those are true. There's a time to say those things. And I don't believe that God causes people to go through terrible things so they will have a testimony. I don't think those things are God's heart. However, God doesn't waste our pain. He doesn't waste it. He will use it and bring good things out of it. And that's beautiful, how he just restores. Saying I understand. Oh, I understand exactly what you're going through. That happened to me. Okay, that may be true, but when somebody's sharing something and we do that, it takes the focus on us now. Well, I understand. And it kind of like, well, I understand. I've been through it. Yeah, I get it. But that's not very helpful. You know, when I was your age, I was bullied too. I'm fine now. Well, good for you. You know, I'm pretty sure when you were bullied as that young kid, you weren't thinking you were going to be fine. It wasn't fine at that time. It was very difficult. You didn't have that ability to see that. So maybe you say something like this. I was bullied too, and it was really hard at the time. I didn't see how I was going to get through it. I didn't know that later on it would be okay, or I would be okay. See, you're still identifying, right? But it's very different in how you're identifying. The next one, pity. Oh, you poor thing. That's terrible. I feel so sorry for you. See, there's pity and there's empathy. Pity is addressing the person. I feel so sorry for you, not the feelings. I'm sorry that happened to you. I'm sorry that happened to you. People just, pity kind of feels kind of, but that's empathy. I'm sorry that happened to you. And then sometimes it's just missing the mark. You know, that must have been really confusing, you know, when actually it was disappointing, or that must have made you really mad. No, it just hurt my feelings. And so just try again. So if you miss the mark, you can always try again to try to identify. Okay, so those are some of the non-valid things. So I'm going to run a scenario for you. And this is kind of probably a lot of us have experienced this either ourselves as children or with children if we have children. So this is a scenario. You're at a picnic and your child is anxious about the bees buzzing around. Anybody relate to that? Our kids probably relate to that. Okay, the first one, denial of feelings. There's no reason to be afraid. They don't want to hurt you. The philosophical response, bees have a right to have a place to fly around. You're just going to have to deal with it. Advice, you just need to be still and not move around and they won't sting you. Anybody heard that? Anybody said that? I don't know if it's true or not, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't work because it's like, how do you be still when the bees are flying around? Maybe it's true, but that's an advice one. Next, questioning. Why are you freaking out so much about this? What's wrong with you? We forget that we were afraid of bees maybe when we were little, don't we? Amateur psychoanalysis. I just don't understand. Has something happened to you before that has made you so afraid of bees? Now, that might have been true. You know, a lot of us are afraid of dogs because we got bit when we were a kid. You know, my husband, he does not like cats. Cat lover, sorry, but he does not like cats. Well, when he was a little kid, he had this cute little innocent cat on him, and it went all of a sudden, it wasn't, it looked innocent. It looked innocent, but it just came up and just went, rah, attacked him. So cats aren't those fun, furry friends to him. Defense of the other person. I can understand why the kids are making fun of you. They know you shouldn't be afraid of bees. That feels really good, huh? Spiritualizing. I am sure God will protect you. You shouldn't worry about these things. Just pray and he will keep you safe. Okay, we know God can protect our children, but what if they get stung? Mommy, you said God would protect me. You know, and maybe he would protect them, but we don't always know. But the point is that spiritualizing doesn't mean we shouldn't pray for our kids. Don't misunderstand me. Saying I understand. I understand exactly what you are going through. I was afraid of bees when I was a kid, and I got over it. See, we think that's comforting. Pity. Oh, you poor thing. That's terrible. I feel so sorry for you. Or missing the mark. Man, those bees are really annoying when what the child maybe would be feeling is fear. Okay, so let's see. What could be a validating empathy response? I can see that you are really scared by those bees buzzing around. It is hard to enjoy your food when you are feeling afraid. Does that sound better? Would that be a better thing? Would that feel comforting? I think that little kid would just be like, that feels good. A sense of relief, a sense of feeling validated. Again, can you really change circumstances? when you're at a picnic and the bees are flying around? Unless you can command the bees to go, which you maybe could. But see, you can't fix that situation unless you take your child out of it. You can't fix it, but you can be there to comfort in it. Remember when you were young. Remember the times you felt misunderstood, hurt, or angry, or defensive. Times when your feelings or needs may have been dismissed or shut down. Imagine if someone said, tell me about your hurt. Your feelings are important to me. Help me understand. Help me understand what I said that hurt you. So here are some guidelines now that we know what not to do and maybe getting a better idea how to do it. These are some things that we can think about to validate the feelings of others around you. First of all, you're going to listen with full attention. People want to be seen and heard. If you're seen, it makes you feel valued and important and like you matter. And so when you're listening, you want to be face to face, so have eye contact and not be distracted by technology and, physically looking them in the eye, or for children, getting down to their level or picking them up and taking them up to your level. And you want to listen quietly without interrupting. But there are some things that prevent us from being good listeners. One, being tired. Hard to listen when we're tired. Do we want to listen to our spouse when we're tired? Or when we're in a hurry. Okay. And sometimes we genuinely are. And someone's sharing something. And it's okay to say, what you want to say right now is really important, but I've got to get out the door to an appointment, but I really want to hear it when I get back. And you know what? Somebody may be coming to you in tears. And depending on the situation, sometimes you may need to cancel your appointment. Or somehow communicate the message that it's important what they have to say. How about distracted? Focus on the Family did a survey of teens regarding their parents. And the biggest concern of teens was their parents not putting down their phones. Isn't it funny? Because parents would say, our biggest concern of teens is them not putting down their phones. But, sometimes we forget we're on our phones too. We're being distracted by our phones. Or forgetting to take an interest in what's being said. You've probably seen it I've seen it where a kid might be trying to get their parents' attention and the kid's not paying attention, and the kid goes up there and just grabs their mother's face and puts it so they can talk to them. Okay, how about, in terms of children, seeing things only from your adult perspective? Sometimes we forget the kids have a different perspective as children. Or wanting to fix feelings, we talked about that. Being preoccupied with your own emotions. And sometimes that's really real. Sometimes you've been in a spot where you got enough you're dealing with. And you just don't have the ability to listen to somebody else right now. And it's okay to say, you know what? I am so sorry. I really want to be here for you right now, but I'm really having trouble being here for myself. And I think people respect that. But at least they have an understanding of where you're at. And then the last one, lack of self-care. If we are not taking care of ourselves, we're going to get to the place where it's just, I ain't got time for that. It's just too much. When you're on the airplane, the flight attendant says, before you help your other person put on their oxygen mask, put on your own. And so if we're not getting our own oxygen, it's pretty hard to be attentive to other people. Children need to have their feelings accepted, respected, and acknowledged, but not necessarily agreed with. And this is true with all of us. When we acknowledge feelings, they feel less upset, are free to share, and more able to cope with the situation. Again, the things that I share are related to all of us. For example, when you tell a child, oh, you don't need to be afraid. There's nothing to be afraid of. But it's real to them. It's real to them. That's one of the things, we know there's not monsters under their bed. But they're afraid there are. There's a reason they're afraid there are. So for you to say, there's no monsters under your bed, they're not going to be less afraid. But what if you said, you know what? Let's go check. Sounds like you're really afraid right now. Let's go check. Go right along with them. And you know what? It's okay to be afraid. I could see why you would be afraid if you thought something was in your closet. No, you're not saying there is something in their closet, but you're validating their feelings. And you can snuggle with them and you can pray with them. But trying to talk them out of their fear is not going to work. People don't typically come out with their feelings and say something. Oh, I'm feeling sad. Because, for example, children, I'm feeling sad because Emily doesn't want to play with me. You know, that's what's going on, but instead your child might come home and say, I don't like Emily anymore. That's how they're saying, I don't like Emily anymore. Well, that's not nice. Emily is your friend. Shut down, kid goes off. Rather than, hey, sounds like you're sad and upset. Tell me more about it. I will give you these words. Tell me more about it. Parents, friends, spouses, tell me more about it. You ask that question and it opens up and you can start having dialogue, especially with your teenagers. Sometimes you can tell what people are feeling by what they say and how they say it. You know, sometimes you can hear sadness and anger and anxiety or frustration or overwhelm. Other times you need to ask, well, how'd that make you feel when that happened? And sometimes they have a hard time, and some say, well, I know if I was in that situation, I might feel blank. Yeah, that is how I feel. Giving them some ability to press. A lot of people just are so disconnected. Feelings aren't even on their radar, a lot of them. Sometimes younger children might just want you to sit and hold them. You don't need a lot of conversation. They just need the comfort. And many people have a hard time explaining why they feel a certain way. You know, saying, I see you're angry is often better than saying, why are you angry? Especially, well, I think a lot of us don't always know why we're angry or what we're feeling. But I see you're angry right now. I see you're sad right now. Tell me more about it. You seem frustrated right now. It opens the door for them to process. All feelings can be accepted, but certain actions must be limited. Okay? You know, I can see you're mad at your brother, but tell him with your voice, not your fists. See, we're acknowledging that you're mad, but how are you going to do it? I know you're frustrated about that, but you need to use kind words. You might have heard that anger, you know, when you're angry to hit something, stomp, hit a pillow, punch something. Do you know that really doesn't deal with anger? We hear it all the time. Just hit a pillow. The reason it doesn't work is because anger has words. Anger has words. And as those words are expressed, how many times when people have put words of anger, do they end up crying? Because anger is often a front for hurt. And so processing that is much more important. I was excited, you know, when one of my grandchildren, they were upset about something and they started to act out in their anger and they stopped. I'm angry right now. See, I'm angry right now. I'm going to acknowledge right where I'm at. I'm angry right now. And just acknowledging it kind of disconnects the expression of it in a negative way. Now, this doesn't mean, especially regarding kids, you know, this doesn't mean that your child is not going to need to be disciplined if they hurt someone in their anger, if they do something. And usually, you know, you need to have rules. Okay, this is what's okay with anger and this is not okay. You can be angry, but you can't hit and you can't kick and you can't pull hair and you can't call names. And what are those other things? You know, because that's when you start to sin in your anger. Also, be careful not to take people's feelings too personally. Most of their emotions are not necessarily about you. Not everything people are feeling is about you. Sometimes you are the dumping ground for people's feelings. And I'm not saying that's okay. We're not supposed to just be a dumping ground. We can be there to help people. But be careful you're not taking everything personally. For example, someone might say, you don't love me. And our response might be, you know that's not true. Or what if we said, man, sounds like you're feeling unloved right now. Do you want to tell me more about that? See, we're opening the door for conversation. Or a friend especially some of these young people. There's so many kids that are just, young people are dealing with so much self-hatred and identity crisis. And, a friend might say, I hate myself. Don't talk to yourself like that. Man, sounds like you're not liking yourself right now. Tell me what that's about. See, the first response going to shut down. The next response going to get some conversation going. Or a child says, I hate you. Go to your room if you can't say something nice. Hey, I know you're angry with me, but you need to tell me in a different way so we can talk about it. Because then, again, it doesn't mean it's okay for maybe how that child is supposed to, but what do you really want to do? Is it just about sending that child to your room? Or do you want to understand what's going on? Do you want to know their heart? Or maybe an adolescent says, I'm upset that I can't watch TV right now. Well, if you would have listened, you wouldn't be in that situation. Okay, and that's just kind of, But what if you said, I can understand that would make you upset. I know you enjoy watching. See, you're not grinding it. They're already experiencing the consequences, but you're validating their feelings. You've already got the consequence. And it's not like you're going to give in. You don't want to give in. But it's just how you go about it. You are the meanest person ever. Why would you ever say such a thing? Or, wow, you sound really, really angry right now. Tell me more about it. Well, all the other kids get to do whatever they want. That must be hard when you aren't able to do everything your friends can do. But typically it's like, well, you're not every other kid. I think I heard that one growing up. But yeah, just like I'm going to go back through this dialogue. You sound really upset right now. I'd like to hear more. All the other kids get to do whatever they want. That must be hard when you aren't able to do everything your friends can do. Yeah, it's not fair. Sounds like you might be feeling left out. Yes, and it's no fun. I'm sure it isn't. Well, we don't want you to feel left out. We have to make choices that we feel are best for you, and I know you won't always understand. See? Takes away that Sometimes children have two different feelings for the same situation. No, I know you're excited to go to camp to be with your friends, but you're scared to be away from home. See, really, those two feelings are very significant, and I love it when my grandkids say, Mimi, I can have two feelings at the same time. It's so important. You're excited to start school, but you're nervous about making new friends. But see, you got a child that's nervous to start school. Oh, it's going to be good, buddy. You're going to make friends. It's going to be great. Well, they might be partly excited and partly scared, and both are okay. All right, negative emotions that people express are harder to validate. And we're afraid to reinforce the negative. Because we think that if someone's feeling bad and we validate it, they're going to feel worse. Life is just terrible right now. I really don't feel like living. Don't we just want to bring them up? Yeah, but you've got so much to live for. You've got so much to be happy about. What if you weren't here? Everybody would miss you. Doesn't help. Doesn't help at all. We have to be where people are. I remember, this is one of my most significant situations. A woman, 32-year-old woman came to us she came to meet with us. Then we encouraged her to do phase 1, which she did. But she came to us. She was on all kinds of antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication. She came in, she was a wreck. I met with her, and then she told her story. 18 months earlier, her husband was coming home from work. It was in the winter, and he slid on black ice. His car was overcome by a semi, and he died immediately, and left her with 2 children under 2 years old. And the family said to her, you have to be strong for your kids. And she did. She sucked it up. And she sucked up. So she's here. It's 18 months later, and she's meeting with me. And she goes, I don't know why I'm such a wreck. My husband died 18 months ago. I should be over this by now. Well, first of all, she had just started grieving. See, it had built up so long. She had started so hard to be strong that she stuffed her grief, and no longer. It had to come out. But she was saying, I should be over this by now. Other people have it worse than I do. I shouldn't be feeling this way. I should be trusting God. See, should. And I say, stop shoulding on yourself. Because most depressed people are not depressed because of what their circumstances are. Most people are depressed because of what they tell themselves about their circumstances. And typically they're saying these kinds of things to themselves. I'm a Christian. I should be happy. I should be thankful. I should be over this. Other people have it worse than I do. And so they never get to feel what they really feel. See, Jesus meets us where we are, not where we think we should be. There's an interesting verse, Proverbs 25:20. Whoever sings songs to a heavy heart is like one who takes off a garment on a cold day and like vinegar on soda. You guys even remember reading that verse? Whoever sings songs to a heavy heart is like one who takes off a garment or a coat on a cold day. What does that mean? So that's the implication is you're trying to cheer someone up that's heavy. It's like taking their coat off on a cold day. You're removing something from them that they need. Or like vinegar on soda. What happens when vinegar is on soda? When I teach my emotions class with kids, and by the way, if you guys, the curriculum is available, you can teach it to your children, you can teach it to your grandkids, it's super user-friendly. We use the inside-out emotions. But we actually do it. We talk about sadness, and we talk about not cheering people up, and we do that. And we say, this cup is you. And this baking soda in there is your sad feelings. And when we try to cheer someone up, what happens? See, it doesn't work. We need those feelings validated, and it's hard to validate those negative feelings. It will not make someone feel worse. You know, half of the Psalms are David lamenting. David, King David, man after God's own heart. Does he sound like a man of faith? Oh, God, where are you? My enemies are against me. Everybody's attacking me. Where are you? Does that sound like a man of faith? He connects with where he really is. And he feels what he's feeling. And then he says, but you, oh God, are my strong tower. You are my refuge. But see, sometimes as Christians, we don't do the lament part. We're like, I can't say that because I won't sound like I got a lot of faith in God. He's not going to like that. I think it was okay for David. But David was able to process through. So have you guys, raise your hand if you've seen the Inside Out movie. Okay, most of you. If you haven't seen it, it's so good. And so just a little background for this, because we're going to show a clip in a minute. So in this clip, there's a character, Bing Bong, and he's feeling very, very sad. And there's two other emotion characters in the story. One is Joy, and she's in the yellow dress, and then there's Sadness. And this clip really depicts what I'm trying to express. When they wrote this movie, they consulted with people who understood emotions and how they affected us, and that was how they decided to process through this movie. And so we're going to watch this clip, and I want you to pay attention to what the difference is between how Joy tried to help Bing Bong and how Sadness tried to help Bing Bong. Big difference, huh? Yeah, see, joy tried to cheer him up. You know, there's that scripture, rejoice with those who rejoice. Weep with those who weep. Yeah, see, when sadness was there, then Bing Bong was able to get all of that out. And it just drew it out, and that was a release. Some of you, your personalities are positive. Some of you are super positive people. You're cheerleaders. It's all the glass is half full people. You know how great that is? That's wonderful to be a positive person, an encourager. And yet, this can be very challenging because you want always things to be fun and happy and exciting and good. But it's not always like that. Life isn't like that. And so it's a little bit more challenging if you're positive, which it's a wonderful, I love joy in this movie. It's a wonderful quality, but we have to be careful. You know, when Lazarus died, remember the story of Lazarus? And, you know, I mean, him and Mary and Martha were good friends. They traveled with them. They were close. And Jesus gets the news that Lazarus has died and you know, they want him to, or that he's sick and they want him to come. But he delays on purpose because he wants to bring God glory. But finally, when he shows up, Lazarus has been dead for 4 days. And he gets on the scene. Everybody's crying, right? Gets on the scene. Now, if I was Jesus, I'd come out saying, stop crying. I'm here. I'm going to save the day. Why are you crying? Don't you know how powerful I am? I'm going to raise him from the dead in a few minutes. So wipe your eyes and get ready for the show. You know, he could have said that, right? I mean, yeah, he could have. Or at minimum, stop crying. I'm going to raise him from the dead. But he wept with them. Why? Why did he weep with them? He wasn't sad because he knew what was going to happen. Because that's what they needed. He wept with them because that's what they needed. Weep with those who weep. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Reminder of this slide. Feelings are for feeling, not for fixing. God doesn't try to fix our feelings. He meets us where we are. We need to be the same for other people. So I'm going to go through, as we close here, we're going to go through some scenarios because this is so different for many of us. Okay, even though this is so much of what I do, I still have to be very intentional to remember, to give people what they need. And so I'm going to do a bunch of scenarios here just so you can get a flavor of what I'm talking about. When you leave on the info desk, there's Ultimate Journey brochures, but there's also a little handout here that kind of summarizes some of this information. And this is the one I use when I do this strictly related to children, but it's the same stuff. It'll give you some of the same tips for yourself. So you're welcome to grab that. Okay, we're going to practice some things. So we're going to listen for feelings. The child says, I don't like the new baby. You have to like her. She's your sister. Shut down. How about, it's okay you're unhappy about the new baby. It can be hard having a new person in their family. I'm glad you were born. There's enough of my love to go around. I remember when our children are 2 years and 5 months apart, and I remember I was sitting feeding my youngest daughter, my oldest daughter. I mean, we'd been home from the hospital for, maybe 6 weeks, so the baby was home, and my older daughter, she's 2.5, and she just was playing there, and I'm feeding her. And all of a sudden, she comes up to me, and she stops, and she goes, Mom, when's she going back? And I was just like, it just took me back. I just said, oh, honey, she's not going back. I did not say this. I did not say anything. I didn't say anything wrong, but I didn't say anything validating either. How about this one? I had a dumb birthday party. Wow. I worked so hard for this party and you don't even appreciate it? I spent buku bucks on this party? Or how about, sounds like you're really disappointed with how your birthday party turned out. I would like to hear more about that. See, what happened was her two best friends came to the party, and they spent the whole time just being off in the corner by themselves. See, it wasn't about the mom didn't do a good birthday party, but that's how that little child was expressing it. I had a dumb birthday party. Maybe some of you can relate to this one. I'm not wearing that stupid retainer. It hurts. Fine, just grow up with crooked teeth. Or we sure spent a lot of money on that retainer. Or I bet that really does hurt. It's sure frustrating that something that is going to help you in the long run is so painful in the short run. I hate that coach. He wouldn't let me play because I was 1 minute late. Well, it's all your fault. You should have been paying more attention to the time. True, right? But grind. Bummer. That would be frustrating. See, they already got a consequence. The coach gave him a consequence. We don't need to rub it in. Or, Rory broke my favorite toy. You have a lot of other toys you can play with. Maybe one of those can be your new favorite. See, all these responses kind of sound logical, right? Just not helpful. Oh, buddy, I'm sorry that happened. You love that toy. See, one shuts down, one gives that release. I don't want to have to stand in front of the class and give my report. You know, what's the feeling? What are they probably feeling? Scared. Yeah, scared. I wonder if you're feeling afraid about being up front with all those kids. What's the scariest thing about doing that? You know, sometimes it's, well, just try it several times. Just go over it several times. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. You'll do a great job. And that's true. They probably will, but they're feeling scared. And you know what? You can say that, and then maybe you can say, and you know what? If you feel like it, I'd listen to you if you want to practice. But sometimes that's the first thing out of the gate. I don't know why teachers have to give so much homework on the weekend. What's that feeling? What are you hearing? Frustrated. Yeah, you sound frustrated that much of your weekend is going to be spent having to do homework when I bet you would rather be doing other things. Didn't get them off the hook for the homework. Well, then you don't need to do your homework. You're right. No, they're still going to do their homework, but there's that validation. We had soccer practice today, and I couldn't kick that ball. We had soccer practice, and I couldn't kick that ball. What's the feeling? Frustration? Yep. Not good enough. How about this? We had soccer practice today, and I couldn't even kick that ball. See, it's the same statement, but our tone of voice says something, right? We hear something through the tone of voice. You sound sad or disappointed or mad, whatever, that you didn't get to play as well as you liked. So you just say, well, you did fine. See, it's not truth of what they're feeling. And then I'm going to add a few in here. I'm so sad my husband just passed away. Don't be sad. You know he's in a better place. I led grief share groups for 3 years, for 3 sessions, and I don't know if you heard about grief share. It's a wonderful program. And it was so heartbreaking to hear the things that church people would say. Well, you know he's in heaven. He was in so much pain anyway. Well, at least you had him as long as you did. Well, at least it wasn't a sudden death. You had a long time to say goodbye. Well, you know he's in heaven. This is real stuff. Real stuff. See, fix it, fix it, fix it. You can't fix grief. Grief is a process you go through, not get over. You have to go through it. I'm so sorry that happened. I'm so sorry you're going through this. You know, the reality is even if it's great for them, what if they were in horrible pain? What if they had Alzheimer's for 5 years and were incoherent? Does that make the death really any easier? And is it better for them? Yeah. See, it's not about what's good for them. It's what we're having to live with because they're gone. See, celebration services are only celebrations for the person that's dead. The rest of us, it's not a celebration. For the rest of us, it's grief and it's sadness. And our culture does not do pain very well. We do not do pain. I remember watching a commercial. Fortunately, we can skip through commercials now. But I don't know if it's still around. But there's this like stick figure. And across the screen, it's like, have you ever felt sad, anxious, distressed, worried? And I'm thinking, who hasn't? And the next slide is get you on some kind of drug. Right? Because we don't do pain. I mean, I don't know if it's 0.5% of the population is on antidepressants. And I'm not knocking drugs, but you can just go and say, man, I'm just having a hard time right now. Oh, here, take this. With no comment about processing your feelings or anything and what's going underneath it. But pain is not illegal. Pain is part of life. And we need to process and get through it. Or how about this one? A teenager says, I'm worried about what I'm going to do after high school. I'm sure you'll figure it out. I'm sure God has a plan for your life. You know, tell me more about that. You sound apprehensive. You sound confused. Tell me more about that. Then they can share more about what's going on. Or maybe you have a friend that says, man, I'm afraid I'm going to get fired. I'm sure you'll find another job. You're a good worker. Rather than, wow, that would be scary, not knowing what you might do next. And you know, there's a lot of wonderful Bible verses that are really good, and we've shared a couple of them. But there's a time to give a Bible verse. Bible verses we don't use to try to fix feelings. And the Word of God is true. God does cause all things to work together for good to those who love Him and are called according to His purpose. But sometimes we don't see that for a long time. We don't see the good in it. And so I hope that you can have a better idea of how we can foster emotional health with children, with ourselves, but with ourselves. See, we can't always count on someone being there for us. I can't always count on that if I'm having a bad day or I'm hurting that someone's going to tell me what I need to hear. Because people are human. You know, my husband and I, we have good days, bad days. You know, we always say, if we're both up, it's great. If we're both down, it's okay. I mean, if one's up and one's down, it's okay. But if we're both down, it's not okay. Because we aren't at a place to be there for each other. But see, we can't expect other people to always be there for us. And so a part of you hearing this is for you to see, how can you be there for yourself? Because you can be there for yourself. When you are sad and hurting, yeah, I'm so sorry that happened today. I can see why you're sad about that, Kathy. That was really hurtful. See, I'm comforting my soul. Because if I don't comfort my soul, you know what some people do? Where are those chocolate chips? Right? Man, I think I need a new outfit. See, this is real. See, like I said, we need to comfort ourselves, but we haven't gotten it. Or, you know, something, feeling angry. You know, it's okay to feel angry. It's okay to be afraid right now. I am not going to tell myself, you shouldn't be in fear, woman. You have God on your side. I'm not going to tell myself that because it's not going to help me. Because you know what? I know that. But I'm going to be there. Say, yeah, I know you're afraid right now. I know it's really scary right now. I can see that. I can see why you feel that way. I've got you. God's got you. Yep. And then I'll say, and Kathy, you remember, God loves you. God's for you. God's with you. But I'm first going to embrace those feelings. And I'm going, so you can be there for you. And when you do this and you're there for you, talk to yourself as though you're another person. It's very powerful. Put your hand on your heart because you can always be okay. Other people are not responsible for your mental health. you can care for your heart. If I'm not going to care for myself, why do I have to expect you to care for me? Remember? It's kind of like your brain listens to you. So if you can remember that, to put your hand on your own heart and give yourself the comfort, give yourself the validation that you need, because your soul is important. And what I've really been teaching you tonight is soul hygiene. How to care for your soul. You know, we make sure that we typically take our shower every day and brush our teeth, and some people go to the club and work out, and we do all these things to take care of ourselves. But what about your soul? Above all else, guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of life. Above all else, guard your heart. What does a guard do? A guard decides what to let in and what to keep out. A guard doesn't keep everything out. See, we are the ones that guard. And if someone doesn't give you the response that you need, if they say, suck it up, buttercup, you're okay. I'm sorry they said that. It's okay to feel that way right now. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you that you gave us our emotions, because you knew we were going to need them. You knew there were going to be happy things and sad things and fearful things and angry things, and you knew. And you care about our souls. You care about our mind and our will and our emotions. And we need to guard those things. We need to guard and garden our hearts. So, Father, I just pray that these seeds would go in. I pray that we would love ourselves the way you love us, validate ourselves the way that you validate us, that we would be good stewards of the soul that you gave us. And as we nurture our own soul, may we be able to nurture the souls of others. That we could be with our children, that we could be with our friends, that we could be with our spouses, that we could be that fresh water on their souls that's life-giving, that's hope-filled. And Father, I just pray for anyone in this room tonight or that might be listening online that is really struggling. Father, I pray that you would just meet them right where they are. That they would experience your love, that you would just hold them in this place. And sometimes there's pain and it's just reality, a reality that we can't change. But thank you that you sit in there with us. Thank you that you help us get through things. Forgive us when we try to go around them or under them or on top of them, when you need us to go through. So give us the courage to go through our pain, through our suffering with you. And may we be faithful to care for our hearts and to lovingly care for others. So we trust you. Just bring these things to our remembrance. Father, we know that so many things that if it's not what comes to us naturally, it's hard. So give us opportunities to stretch our emotion muscles, our validating muscles. I pray a blessing over every person here and all of their relationships, that each one of these people would just be bearers of living water to the souls of all those encounter. And thank you that you are our living water, that we drink from you. We love you. We thank you. Amen. Well, go love on people. Hopefully this gives you a few other tools for how you can love on them. Again, there's a little handout out there that might help you. If you're interested in Emotions in Motion, For kids, it's just a drive that share, and that's everything there for you to make copies and do whatever you want. You can, if you email info@theultimatejourney.org and say you're interested, it's $50 for the whole curriculum for preschool and elementary school. And like I said, it's something I've done it with my own grandkids, and then we do groups at our building. We take young people or little kids come in, and I had one dad say, "You need this for grown-ups. My kids know more about emotions than I do." So that's a good thing, right? We can teach to. Well, God bless you. Safe travels back home.